past is, Jenny knows this very well. I'm a verbose individual, which means that I get excited and then kind of get off track and the subject ends up getting blurred. And I have focused a lot on sort of strategic thinking and less on tactical. So I really try to keep this tactical because I think when it's one of these things like, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? Like, once you start and have a little bit of a path and see how it unfolds, everything kind of follows. It's the getting started part that is the hardest part. So you guys probably don't remember Joe Friday, but when he's from a TV show from the 60s. I was not alive then. I just watched Nick at Night when I was, whenever he interviewed somebody, it's like, just the facts, man. So this is my reminder to stick to the facts. Okay, so I'm going to start at a very high level and kind of come down from there. The first and most important piece is embracing the big picture. And what I mean by this is we had a very interesting thing with COVID and a kind of a false type of demand. So when COVID happened, there was a very traditional style retail demand on e-commerce. So you list your products and people are going to buy them, and that's the end of the game, and it's a magical world of simplicity. And then when COVID kind of cooled off, the type of demand that centered around e-commerce changed to being much more like the in-store demand. And so one of the things that we fight, generally speaking, and one of the things that is just hard, is taking this box of virtual products and remembering that, even though this is what we see in our minds when we are setting up an e-commerce store, which is just walls of products that we're trying to present to the customer, the reality is that it's more like this, where each of these trucks is an e-commerce store /site/brand, and any given prospect or consumer or Google searcher or anything else is standing in this parking lot trying to figure out which one of these trucks to go to. And so even though products are an important part of the conversation, what we've found with the most successful brands is the stores that lead with the store brand first and follow with product after the fact tend to do substantially better. And what that looks like in practice is I went in and did a organic keyword rankings for basically the top 10 running stores in the United States. And these are what they rank on the first page for. And if you look, it's basically all about races and run clubs. One of them is a neutral running shoe, and then somewhere there's like a running in 30-degree weather. I'm like, that's so unusually specific. Yeah. Right. Well, funny enough, they rank number 1 for running in 30-degree weather, but they rank number 16 for running in 50-degree weather. I'm like, what are they writing about? And I'll send you this as well. But what you see with a couple of exceptions like the Arahi versus the Gaviota is that you see the je ne sais pas, the experience of the running store as being the thing that's looked for over product. And this natural tendency for us to think of an e-commerce site as a place for products, and the need for us to kind of shift that mindset to making the e-commerce store a depiction of like a virtualized version of what it feels like to walk in the front door of the running store. And the same conversations that happen there should be emulated here. Just for fun, I went in and I did some basically how much would it cost to rank number 1 for these various things. So for Clifton Nut, basically this traffic potential, what that says is that there's 53,000 visits to this site over, I think this was like a week's period of time. And in order to rank number 1, you would have to have at least 53,000 direct visits based on search results to compete. And the
our individual store.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And so, the dollar equivalent of running ads to compete with this Hoka page is about $27,000, which of course is impossible. Right. And so the question is, how do we, and it kind of repeats itself, right? But our minds always go to, if I'm going to run advertisements, it needs to be for a product. And when I'm, building a front page, I need to make it easy to access product. And that is true to some degree. But one of the things that we've noticed from, the really successful advertisers and the really successful stores that have high conversion rates is if you advertise the fitting process or indoor track best practices from Harry or whoever it is, the personality of the people, the personality of the store, the stuff that brings people back in person, figuring out how to represent that online gets substantially higher returns. And you also have this, you also maintain this sort of a curated presentation that makes specialty as opposed to, Zappos or whatever else. So thinking about the store as a reflection of the conversation that's had in person, and thinking about all of those first place rankings being how people end up finding all these different stores, let's think about who the people are and what the behaviors are that bring them to the e-com site to begin with. And you guys may have seen some version of this, but essentially you have the first person who is the prospect who's never heard of the business before. They're going to do a ChatGPT search, Google search. I put Bing because I wanted 3, but I don't know if anybody actually uses Bing. They're going to go to the website. They're going to look at the e-com store to see what's going on, what their experience might be like, and then they're going to go in and, whenever I ask this question, the answer is always the same, so I'll assume. But, the thing that brings somebody into the running store for the first time tends to be the fitting process. There's some need for that expertise. And so they come in, Harry fits them in a shoe that, they're pronate and they need the Adrenaline 24 and they head out the door and they're good to go. And the hope is that they return. You get their email address, you get them involved in the loyalty program and kind of try to wrap them into the community. The second person is the repeat customer. So this is the person who remembers how wonderful the fitting process was, and as a result of circumstance, marketing, whatever it is, sees all of the sort of subjective, intangible values that the store brings and decides to re-engage. And most of the time, they re-engage in one of these paths, getting involved in the community, going to the run club, social media and something around social media, whether it's like product reviews or the trail night with Blue Ox or something along those lines. And so they develop a perceived value for the store based on these community events. And every store is different, obviously, but for the most part, they kind of all revolve around that community. And of course, it's like at Run Free, we're like, oh, how come not everybody automatically knows exactly how everything works? Because we stare at it all day, so it makes perfect sense to us. The same thing kind of happens with running stores. You've got these really involved communities that feel like they are tied closely to the crowd around, and that you're really announcing this stuff to the people that come in. But in reality, most people have a hard time getting a sense of continuity between what is the brand that is this community and how can I wrap my identity in it and that sort of thing. And so when we think about these two people, the first time prospect who's never heard of you before and the repeat purchaser, as the person who's enticing them to do stuff, they are completely different behaviors, right? So the first time person is going to do a Google search, figuring out what it is that brings people into the store the very first time is going to be key to that process. And we'll talk about the actual store in a second. And it's going to be slightly different for everybody, and it's honestly worth asking people. What brought you in? What were you looking for? Or, keeping some kind of a record so you can get an idea. Sometimes you might be surprised, other times not so much. And then with the repeat customer, it is how do we connect with this person in a way that they're going to pay attention? How do we give them something that has a valuable feeling to it? One of the things that this repeat customer persona has said over and over in some variation is, it's intimidating. I'm not a runner, but I want to be a runner. I, made a New Year's resolution or whatever, and all of this stuff is intimidating. I don't know what any of this stuff means. All these, people are in really great shape, and I'm not, and I feel silly going in and asking some of these questions and those kinds of things. So, what is the persona that is the repeat customer for you the type of person who feels that intimidation, and what are the things that you can do to kind of open that door for them, whether it's talking about couch to 5K or explain it like I'm 5 or something along those lines to be more welcoming in that space. But ultimately, it's these things that bring people back. One of the statistics that I thought was really interesting is 55% of people who shop at a running store are a one-time buyer and they never return, but they give an average Google review of 4.5 stars. And so you're like, well, what's that all about? And you have about a 20% repeat customer rate across the board, regardless of whether that's the second time they purchase or the 15th. And really what it is the first time they come in, they're looking for your expertise, and the product is is an emergent result of the expertise that they receive. And then any subsequent time, they're either going to be engaging your expertise in some way, shape, or form that's valuable in the same way, or they have bought into the brand and they frequent you from a loyalty perspective because they feel their identity is connected. But it doesn't happen as much as you would think. So, getting this connected is the way to go. So how do you actually do this, and what does this look like? To avoid making this about site design and more about layout, I actually made all the boxes gray. That way there's no because the idea is the content rather than the design. So the first thing to think about is that when you think about, okay, what is my front page, like the landing page on the site and or the store, sometimes they're the same thing, sometimes they're different, what should it be? It should really be the starting point. It should reflect the starting point of the most common conversations that the people who work at the store have with people who walk in the front door, whether that's, injury recuperation or, track team or you name it, either thinking about or asking the employees in the store, okay, what are the conversations that you have, or monitoring it for a couple of weeks, and then saying, okay, well, we want to have this welcoming feel with people's faces connected to it on the e-com site as well, and if you can even take it away from the product almost entirely. So for example, we call this above the fold, which I think is actually a misnomer, because he and I worked for this boss who was a very smart guy, but he said it, before you start scrolling, everything above is above the fold. This is your most valuable real estate. And so, and this is one of the more common layouts. When you look at the slider up here, the fitting process, some description and or path to, go to a Calendly link and create and schedule a fitting if you want to do like a one-on-one, I don't know, whatever it is that you do that makes it, feel like that white glove experience, having that front and center. The weekly pub runs, new releases, and most importantly, adding a layer before the new release product that includes someone in the company having something to say about the product. So, Jim is a big trail runner, and this new shoe is great for trail running, but Jim tested it out and here's what he has to say. And then you read what Jim has to say, and then he's like, if you like this, then get it here. But also, these are the other 3 shoes that I suggest to folks that are doing it. And you've reduced choice, which always increases the potential for a sale, and you've added this extra layer of value. They can't get the info that Jim has provided about that new release anywhere else, and now you're kind of back to that draw that is the value of the store.
Not to get super in the weeds with the specifics of things. I see the new releases tab at the top.
Oh yeah, I forgot to change that.
Because we haven't implemented that with many of the stores. I usually suggest that banner being like, okay, if you have something new, use the banner, but we haven't had like a dedicated page. Are you seeing that should be implemented?
Yeah, I think new releases as a page are great, and if you can, I also recognize that it's a lot of work to have someone's opinion about new releases, so featuring it does really, really well. Yep. Featuring those for some of the big ticket items, maybe at the top of the page, and then for other new releases that you may not have somebody's information about, having that a little bit further down the page. Yep. For sure. And of course, gift cards. And I always go on and on about gift cards. Yeah, huge. And we are finalizing testing of, and will be releasing sometime this week, the physical gift card copy. So basically what that is I go online, I buy a digital gift card from you guys, I can click a button that says, hang on, I don't want to set this down because it'll move away. I can click a button that says I want a physical copy. And so when we create the card in Lightspeed or Rix or whatever it is, and we notify you guys that the card is available and that they've selected I want a physical copy, you can hit print and print the UPC on a label printer and take the sticker, stick it to the back of a gift card blank, and give them the physical one as well. So like during the holidays, people can't find the time to visit the store, but they do want to give somebody a physical card in their stocking or in a box or whatever. They can do this really easily, and it makes it, there's like, it's a well lubricated path to getting what they need when they're online. And we found that like it's very, very helpful, and you don't have to go in and create individual products for different gift card denominations and that kind of thing.
Is that going to be easier? Right now we just have we have gift cards, and each one has its own unique identifier that when somebody places an order, we don't have e-gift cards yet, but we can scan it, and then it just is attached to that unique identifier already. And we can put it into the notes of the purchase so they can use it without the physical card. Is this going to be so we'll have to print a label to put over the barcode of our existing gift cards?
Well, yeah, so if they choose the fact that they want a physical, yes, that's how you do it. Or put it on, a gift card blank of some kind. You guys could have a separate one if you wanted, but yeah. So they get an email that's got the card, and they can show you the email, and you can scan it with the gun, and it works at the register. But also they have the physical. If they wanted to give that as a gift or something like that, they have both options. Yeah, that's right. Makes it a lot easier to deal with, and it's already built in the system. And we'll send an email around that tells everybody, here's what we got, here's how to use it, etc. David's writing the documentation. But again, gift cards are huge around this time of year. When you think about what comes next below the fold, and this is holiday specific, but it can change throughout the year. This is again one of those where you have the capability to add a filter of the voice of the people that work at the store in between the consumer and the final product that's presented to them. And you notice that here we have 4 choices, super simple, nothing else. And the rule is the fewer choices the user has, the higher the likelihood is that they're going to make a purchase. And specialty, generally speaking, is about curation. That's like a supernatural process when you're in person, because you're like, okay, let's sit down, tell me your story, tell me about all the stuff that you've got going on. Okay, well, here's the 3 shoes that I would suggest for your situation. But on the e-com side, it's abstracted away from everything. So we're thinking, well, we want to make sure that it's as easy as possible to see everything that we have, because they're looking for product. And it is true that sometimes they're looking for product, but most of the time, if they land here, they're really looking to get a feel for what you have or to engage with that expertise, because they can get it faster and likely cheaper if they go to brooksrunning.com. So differentiating on the spot is such a big deal. Branded apparel is second in line from gift cards as far as most popular stuff on the site at any given moment in time. The gifts for him and gifts for her are, again, just an example of how you can place that little piece in there. And you see below, I had this Luke's Holiday Survival Guide. So this can be, when I put it in there, what I was thinking is like, how do you keep up your training during the holidays with all the stuff that's going on? And that takes you to a page where it's basically an interview with Luke and his face, and then it's like, here's what I do, and here's the water system that I use, and then you've got the products there that you can click into. So it's that additional layer in front of the products, and it is a natural process of curation. Hey, how's it going? There's also I can't believe it stayed when I set it down. There's also the whole idea of less is more. What's the sweet spot? And just simply from a results perspective, we found that about 10 to 12 categories total is about as far as you can go without the user disengaging, whether that's through confusion or whatever else. They tend to leave when it's more than that.
That's the products within them as well. 10 to 12 products max too?
Not necessarily. As long as you're...
Women's footwear, right?
Yeah, like women's footwear, and then within women's footwear you can, if at all possible at any moment in time, insert that voice of the store before presenting the products. But, like if you look at must-have shoes on Palmetto's site, they've got 200 or 300, and it's totally cool to have it that way, because it's kind of this... The value that Palmetto is bringing that somebody else isn't is these are the shoes we picked out that we think all of our people would really love, and you don't have to sort through everything the manufacturer makes. These are the ones we've picked. So there's an implicit curation that's happened there. So you don't have to worry so much about products. Categories definitely, and then remembering that it's a conversation that's happening inside their head with the identity of the store. And you'll notice here that a lot of this stuff is activity specific, is subject specific from a conversation perspective. Winter running essentials, one-on-one training, like winter track. These are. It's going to depend for each store what changes, but ultimately these are places where it's really easy to insert that conversation before you present the products. And of course, especially with store owners and folks who have done e-commerce in other retail areas where you're not competing with the manufacturer and that kind of thing, reducing choice is a scary thing. You're like, wait a minute, I'm cutting all this stuff out. Why would I do that? So there is the other option, which I would always suggest. Oh, sorry. Here's an example of a really great curation, and it can be a video or whatever else. But this is Palmetto talking about a comparison of different types of shoes and what they suggest. And then down at the bottom, you would have links to the two best of this one, the two best of this one, and then maybe an opinion from each of the people in the store about which they like the best. This is what I was trying to get to. So
that's like a blog post.
Yeah,
right. Okay.
It is. Or a page with just text in the content. And after we go through this, I'll reach out to you guys if we want to follow up on like how to build this stuff as a class. We can do that too. But the two things that I would suggest adding, just kind of as a catch-all and a rule of thumb, is a link that says browse our inventory. So if you're stressed about reducing the choices that you're sending out to everybody into the world, browse our inventory takes them to the kind of traditional e-commerce view, and they're welcome to dig through it all they want to. And then a clearance bin. And again, everybody's sort of sale process looks different. And I had never thought about this ever until I started talking to the stores. Eric Bartlett is the one that always comes to mind. He's like, I don't want my clearance and sale stuff anywhere near the identity of my store. If I could, I'd have them as separate sites. That's interesting, because that curation piece is such a valuable thing that the kind of clearance and sale stuff is a different customer with a different objective that, you know, he wants to invest in and make his brand available to them, but in a different way. I was like, that's pretty hardcore. I don't know that I would do it that way, but, you know, it's a good point.
If the store curates, you have kind of this holiday vibe up for a page right now. So if we're curating kind of a quarterly page that's very like custom, do you suggest swapping out the homepage of the website with this version during those times? Yes?
Yep. And the one asterisk to that is either if the page is going to continue to exist by itself without linkage from the front page, great, fine, you know. Let's say, of course, winter track, right? If it's going to continue to exist, great, leave it. No SEO pains whatsoever. But if it's going to be something that you want to completely remove, maybe it's 2024 holiday picks, you'll just add a 301 redirect. You know, that way there's no broken links. Yeah.
You can duplicate these too. So let's say you're doing one for this quarter, you can hit duplicate the whole page and then swap out all the content things.
Yeah.
So you don't have to like rebuild the page every time. And then next year you can pick up the same page and edit it out.
And there is always, the first time is always the hardest. It takes freaking forever to get it all figured out. But then after you do it a few times, you know, swapping out the pages to follow some kind of a theme that is a hot topic at the store really helps to kind of deliver that message through the world. But you know, this is the person stressed about curating, and you know, these are the extra options. So the pop-ups and automations. So I don't know if I'm a huge Simpsons fan. I don't know if you guys remember this from the episode The Island, but Homer Simpson made a website, and it was basically Dancing Jesus and all these other little gifs with some music playing in the background. There is a trend, generally speaking, with web everything to throw pop-ups in your face, a la 1997, and everybody, at first it was like, okay, not that big of a deal, but now everybody's kind of super annoyed by it. And coming up with an alternative to pop-ups, unless you have an unbelievably good engagement, is probably a good idea, because people are you know, using like uBlock Origin to block pop-ups and even chat functions and that kind of thing, and they miss it entirely. And then automation. So what I mean by this is, like, if you're using Klaviyo or something like that, push notifications is another one. When you set up an automation, and I've done this before, it's so easy to do that it scares me. You know, you're thinking of a specific use case. Okay, well, this is an abandoned cart, but then, you know, there's some miscalibration in the software where now you're absolutely spamming somebody to death. So they'll go and do an empty cart, but you'll send them like 16 emails or something like that by accident. And it happens a lot more often than you might think. Push notifications is one of the biggest ones where, you know, there is a misunderstanding about what an automated push notification actually does, and then they just start spamming people every time an event comes up, no matter whether they're signed up for the event or not. And people turn off notifications, and then you lose that path. So, you know, when you're thinking about pop-ups or any other sort of call to engage, test it, assume that it's going to break somewhere and spam somebody to death, because I don't know that I've ever created any workflow like that and not had it do that at some point where I had to be like, oh shit, okay, I got to go back and fix it. Because, I mean, you know, somebody has a bad experience with push notifications, for example, and they turn that off, you know, that's a really useful path that kind of disappears, and nobody did anything wrong other than make a little mistake. Uh-oh, this may not work now. I did, okay. So I didn't have a picture that I could express this with, but you know, when you're thinking about like useful content, the voice of the people in the store, I always use the example at Charlotte Running Company. So my son is 15, he runs track and cross country and all this other stuff. And when he first started running track in 7th grade, he went to Charlotte Running Company, sat down with this guy named Armani, who kind of stepped him through the whole fitting process, and they kind of chatted about running, and he gave him some tips. And as soon as he walked out the door of Charlotte Running Company, he got on Strava, and he searched for Armani, and he started following him. So now he follows him and is liking his runs and all this stuff. And every purchase that ever happens between my son and the running industry goes through Armani individually and solely. Like, he's the guy. And I mean, that's really where the value is, right? Like, my son will never shop anywhere unless Armani leaves Charlotte Running Company. You know what I mean? Like, he knows him. It's that curation, the really special thing. And so, making that as available as possible and as front and center as possible really drives that value. And also, when we think about it, people want, especially younger folks, want to shop local and contribute to the local community, and are oftentimes looking for a path to engage with the brand more deeply. And you see, that's why branded apparel is so great. You go on a trip or something and you've got the Bull City Running hat on, somebody's going to make a comment because it's cool, it's specific to your area, you're kind of representing, similar concept. But sometimes it's also hard to figure out where to start. So some of the really good sort of fuels for that curated step, that inserting of the identity in, is community stories. Even if it's borrowing from the Armani story to be like, okay, well, clearly, this guy's perspective matters. Let's create something around that. Or, Eric Bartlett, to use him again, he lost like 300 pounds, and that's what led him to own his running store. And so, he's a really big sort of weight loss / fitness, tries to reduce the friction on the front side of people being terrified to get started running when everybody in the store looks like they're marathon runners, Telling those stories can always lead to, more equity from a brand perspective, and then, products at the end, where the product is the emergent result of engaging with that value. Articles and guides, the expert articles and guides. This one it's so unbelievably effective because there's not nearly as much out there as you would think there is. There's tons and tons of ads for the, Gel Cayano 30 or whatever they're on. But, when you look at a review by a person who doesn't work for a review site, or, that's not an AI, if it's Steve Moore from Run More or whatever, he's like one of 4 that isn't a corporate-owned reviewing entity that's having. So now all of a sudden you went from competing with A6, yeah, to competing with the 3 other people who happen to do reviews, and putting your personality and opinions into that just creates so much more momentum behind the purchase. And then user-generated content. So this one's one that I've seen people do, but it's much less common. But it is basically, taking contributions, whether that's a really active social media or whether there's some kind of a story where the community came together around somebody. And what you're really doing is just advertising the value of the connectedness with the people. Brad Brown, who is with Complete Runner, came over and had a suggestion for the mobile apps that I thought was really super interesting, and it kind of follows this path. He's like, what happens if we have an event, somebody checks into the event, and then if they take a selfie or take a picture from within the app, they can attach it to the event, and it has, the store logo on it, and any pictures that were taken and attached to the event are then, visible by anybody else who's checked into the event. And, you can social share and all that kind of stuff, but there is, not only have you attended this event, but you also have this path of kind of re-experiencing it through the eyes of the community contributions. And it's like anything else, like with TRE. I don't know about you guys, but every time they put the pictures up, I scroll through basically all 5 days of it, looking at myself maybe, but also just seeing what else is going on. But I wouldn't normally be on the TRE website outside of just getting ready for the show, Oh, you're good. And then, of course, shameless self-promotion. It doesn't have to be the app, but see you, Jeannie. It doesn't have to be the app, but it is incentivizing engagement in some way, shape, or form, whether that's a loyalty program or whether that is like achievements. If you run a certain mileage or attend a certain number of events or whatever it is, then you get, come into the store and we'll put you on the big achievers board, the 500 miler club, whatever it is. People eat that stuff up, and when you can, the goal is to get them into the store under, like, the best case scenario is come into the store. The second best is online, simply because people spend more when they're with you in person, and so using it as a springboard to get them in the store for something like an incentive is helpful as well. The app's really great for that, but again, slightly different conversation. The other one is SEO. So in May, I was sitting on a panel at the RIA Summit for talking about AI, and I said, I think by in a year, Google will be, dead or dying. And I know that sounds crazy, but I just feel like there's this thing that AI is going to do that's going to completely change things, and Google's too big to change quickly, and I think it's going to go by the wayside. And they beat me by like 5 months. So ChatGPT's recently added web search into ChatGPT, and you can talk to it like a person, and it goes out and does a web search, and it's incredible. The results are so much more relevant than doing a Google search. It's like a total game changer. No question, this is going to be the way that everyone searches, within a very short period of time. And the interesting part about it is that, the AI uses language to find results that are relevant, as opposed to all the old tricks that Google had to use because of the technology to sort through what was good and what wasn't didn't exist. So a lot of the keyword stuff and meta tags and that kind of thing will be less and less valuable from an SEO perspective, and the actual content that you create that is, descriptive of whatever it is that you're trying to contribute to the world will become much more of an impact on where you rank.
What is SEO?
Search engine optimization. Okay. Yeah, sorry. So that's, like if you're trying to, and back in the day it would be, add a keyword to the page a certain number of times in a certain order, and but it doesn't really work that way.
Concept. It just isn't quite sure the acronym. Thank you.
Yep. And so, keeping in mind, it's very easy when you're polishing things. It's very easy to kind of go down the rabbit hole of, I want to do like a scan of the site. I have this list of 500 things that this scan, Lighthouse or whatever it is, tells me I need to change for my search engine optimization to be maximized. I spend tens of thousands of dollars and hundreds or thousands of hours doing all this stuff, and there is no change whatsoever to the search engine results. That's almost universal. So I always tell folks, be careful, because that practice of trying to optimize for search engines can eat you alive, and it's less and less effective as time goes on.
In theory, it's just moving to a different type of search. So,
how does that translate?
Yeah, how does that translate?
No, it's a good question.
Still, is it GPT optimization? GPO?
Basically, yeah. So the way to future-proof it is the value of the content that you create. So in the old days, it was, if you write a blog post, you want to have your keywords bolded and you want to have your meta descriptions all set up and everything. Now it is, when you write a blog post, you want it to be as valuable as possible to the reader.
Okay.
End of story. Like the technical stuff on the edges matters less and less and less as time goes on.
No fluff, just do the best you can.
Right, exactly. If you write it like a human and it's useful to you and the people around you, then it's going to do much, much better than something AI generated.
ChatGPT to do my blog posts?
No. So I would say start and then do ChatGPT and then adjust. Otherwise, who can write blog posts that often? It's a freaking nightmare. You know what I mean? But it is interesting because the technical practice of search engine optimization is changing so much, so fast, and it's better. Writing content for the value of the content is a much easier thing than trying to go through and add all image tags and yeah, exactly. and that's the end. And I only went over by, oh, you know what? I'm under. That's never happened before.
Record time.
So the question for you guys is, what? Hopefully this was useful. What follow-up? What other information would you like to kind of help travel this path more easily?
I have just a question, if you know the answer. When this is just like website design, but is it helpful to kind of feature photos with people and like with our actual staff?
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
My staff is so camera shy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Of course.
Everybody hates it. I hate it. I won't be on camera, but
Pictures of customers wearing your gear.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's fine.
Yeah, or like races or something where it's a little bit zoomed out.
Your products, but in your store. So
Yeah,
not like
yeah.
it goes from Brooks. Have it
Right, we do all of that, but I do our social media as well, and every time I can get a person holding it, and like you see a human, it does so much better.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I'm really excited about the thought of doing like some longer form articles. I think that's really cool.
and then curating stuff.
Yeah. It's fascinating because, I mean, it makes sense having seen it, but it's not intuitive, like where you go, okay, I'm going to give people less choice, and I'm going to stick a front end on there of somebody talking about this. How does that translate to more? But in reality, they're looking for you to be that point of curation. You know, it's like when you go into a Louis Vuitton and say, I want a bag. They don't have 30 bags. They got like 2, and there's a guy in a really nice suit that's taking you to a single one, you know, and polishing it, and yeah, same sort of deal. I think what we'll probably do next is do some examples of some of the layouts and pages. That way, you know, like how do I create that in-between page? We can show how that stuff is done.
So I missed the beginning, obviously. You're kind of advocating, okay, you've got this homepage that has curated buckets of product. Get that. When you click on that, there's a landing page, and you're saying that landing page has some kind of content related to that category. Is that what we're talking about?
Yep.
So it could be some text, could be a video,
Yep.
kind of thing.
Definitely. And, you know, like if you've got somebody who's a big trail runner, you know, winter trail running with Armani, and, you know, he's doing a video or, you know, a page with text or both, and it's like, you know, here's the shoes I wear, and these are like the 2 that I recommend for, you know, neutral, and it's kind of reducing the amount of choice and also giving some value in front of it.
But then I can scroll right past that and get to the product. The product.
100%.
If I don't care about Armani, sorry.
Right.
I
No,
just
you're
know
right.
what I want.
Absolutely.
Scroll, click.
100%.
And it can be simple too. It could be a couple sentences on why those products are important. And then you embed a collection into it.
Yeah.
So the collections are really easy to make.
And it doesn't even necessarily have to be any content. It can simply be, like Palmetto Running Company is a great example. They like must have shoes, and you click, and there's like, you know, a reduced set of
And you can still do it for a new release. You could have a landing page for the Ghost 17 and a photo of the Ghost 17, a paragraph from Brooks, and then the Ghost 17 collection for men's and the Ghost 17 collection for women's. And the beauty is you can duplicate those pages, and then when the Graviton comes out, you can do the exact same thing and embed the 2 new collections, change the text, and you've got your next landing page.
And when you're thinking like, what does that look like? You could even, you know, take somebody who works at the store, take a video of them talking to a customer, and literally just do the exact same thing. Because the goal is always to replicate the in-person experience as much as possible online.
Is there any way to integrate, like, if we're already doing some of that, like on our social media, is there a way to integrate our social media feeds into the website?
Yep, there is. And
That'll direct traffic back and forth.
for sure. And there's a couple different ways that you can do it where, you know, you can either lead people to a page or include both so that you're going in both directions. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Appreciate y'all sitting through that, and we'll have a copy. I'll send a copy around in PDF so you guys can see all the keywords, result stuff, and then we'll be on YouTube as well.